Close your eyes for a moment and imagine absolute nothingness. Not darkness, because darkness is still something you perceive. Not silence, because silence is a sound you hear. Imagine the space before thought, before sensation, before the very concept of you even exists. This isn't death. It's not sleep. It's something far more profound. Something that mystics have whispered about in temples, that physicists have glimpsed in equations, and that you, yes, you, have touched every single night without even knowing it. They call it the void state, and it's the doorway to everything you've ever wanted. But here's what they don't tell you. Reaching it isn't about doing more. It's about becoming less. The year is 1944, and a man named Neville Goddard stands before a packed auditorium in New York City. His voice is calm, almost hypnotic, as he tells the audience something that sounds absolutely insane. You are God. Not a piece of God. Not connected to God. You are God, experiencing itself through the filter of your human senses. The audience shifts uncomfortably. Some leave. But those who stay are about to learn something that will crack open the very foundation of their reality. Neville doesn't speak in religious platitudes or mystical riddles. He speaks with the certainty of someone who has seen behind the curtain. Consciousness is the only reality, he says, and in that moment, he's pointing toward the same truth that a Buddhist monk discovered under a Bodhi tree 2,500 years ago, that a quantum physicist would later find in a laboratory, and that you're about to discover right now. But let's go back even further, because this story doesn't begin in 1944. It begins in ancient India, in texts so old they predate written history. The Vedas speak of a state called Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness, beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It's described as pure awareness without an object, consciousness aware of itself without the contamination of thought. The sages who experienced this state returned with wild claims. That reality is Maya, an illusion, a dream being dreamed by a cosmic consciousness that they called Brahman. And here's the kicker. They said you are that Brahman, simply pretending to be a limited human being, like an actor so committed to a role they've forgotten they're acting. For thousands of years this was dismissed as religious poetry, beautiful metaphor, the mystical ramblings of men who meditated too long in caves. Until something extraordinary happened in the early 20th century. A young physicist named Max Planck was studying heat radiation when he stumbled upon something that made no sense. Energy didn't flow in continuous waves like everyone believed. It came in discrete packets, little bundles he called quanta. It was as if reality itself was pixelated, like a cosmic video game. Other physicists rushed to explore this strange new world, and what they found shattered every assumption we had about the nature of existence. Werner Heisenberg discovered that you cannot know both the position and momentum of a particle simultaneously. Not because our instruments aren't good enough, but because the particle literally doesn't have a definite position until you observe it. Think about that. The act of observation, consciousness itself, determines physical reality. In a famous experiment, scientists fired electrons through two slits. When no one was watching, each electron went through both slits simultaneously, creating an interference pattern. But the moment they measured which slit the electron went through, it chose one. Reality changed based on whether consciousness was paying attention. Niels Bohr, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, said something that would have made those ancient Vedic sages smile. Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. He's saying that the solid, physical world you touch and see is built from particles that don't have definite properties until consciousness interacts with them. The observer and the observed aren't separate. They're entangled in a cosmic dance where neither can exist without the other. This is what Neville Goddard understood without a single equation. When he said consciousness is the only reality, he wasn't being poetic. He was being literal. The world you experience isn't happening to you. It's happening as you, through you, by you. Now here's where it gets personal, where this stops being theory and becomes something you can actually use. Neville taught a specific technique, something he called living in the end. You don't beg for what you want. You don't hope for it. You don't affirm it into existence. You simply assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and you do it so completely that your consciousness accepts it as fact. But there's a problem. Your conscious mind, that chattering voice in your head, is constantly interfering. It's arguing with you, doubting you, pulling up evidence from your past to prove why this won't work. The conscious mind is like a security guard at the door of manifestation, and it never sleeps. Unless you can get past it. Unless you can find a state where the conscious mind goes completely quiet, where there's no resistance, no doubt, no interference, a state of pure consciousness without thought, the void state. Alan Watts, that brilliant philosopher who spent his life translating Eastern wisdom for Western ears, explained it like this. You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Stop and feel that for a moment. You're not a separate entity trying to manipulate reality from the outside. You're reality itself, temporarily convinced you're just a person. Watts would tell people that the feeling of being a separate self, locked inside your skull, looking out at a foreign world, that feeling is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated. It's what Buddhists call the illusion of self, what Hindus call Maya, what modern psychology calls the ego. And this illusion is the only thing standing between you and the void state. In Zen Buddhism, they have a practice called zazen, just sitting, not sitting to achieve something, not sitting to become enlightened, just sitting, allowing thoughts to arise and fall without grabbing onto them. A Zen master named Shunryu Suzuki once said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." He's pointing to something crucial. The more you think you know about meditation, about consciousness, about how to reach the void state, the harder it becomes. Because reaching the void isn't about acquiring anything, it's about releasing everything you think you are. Every identity, every label, every story you tell yourself about who you're supposed to be. When a Zen student asked, "What is Buddha?" the master replied, "No mind, no Buddha." In other words, when you stop trying to be anything, including enlightened, that's when you discover what you already are. This is where Neville's teachings fuse perfectly with these ancient traditions. He would tell his students to enter a drowsy, sleepy state, the edge between waking and sleeping, what modern neuroscience calls the hypnagogic state. In this state, your brainwaves slow down from beta to alpha to theta, and something magical happens. The critical factor of your conscious mind goes offline. That security guard falls asleep. Your subconscious mind, which Neville understood to be God itself, becomes directly impressionable. This is the state where you don't try to imagine. You simply are in the imagination. But the void state goes even deeper. It's what happens when you fall through the hypnagogic state without falling asleep. When you reach the pure awareness that Turiya describes, where there's no imagination at all because there's no you left to imagine. The Indian sage Ramana Maharshi, who spent most of his life in silent meditation on a mountain called Arunachala, taught a simple practice. Ask yourself, "Who am I?" and trace the thought back to its source. Every time a thought arises, you ask, "To whom does this thought occur?" The answer is always, "To me." Then you ask, "Who am I?" and you follow that sense of I backward, like following a flashlight beam back to the flashlight. At first, you'll find thoughts, memories, sensations. But if you keep going, keep asking, keep tracing, you eventually reach a point where there's awareness but nothing being aware of. Just pure consciousness, watching itself, an eye that cannot see itself because it's what's doing the seeing. That's the void. And from that space, Ramana said, the entire universe emanates like a dream. Your desired reality isn't something you need to travel to. It's something you select from infinite possibilities by choosing which dream to dream. Modern physics stumbled onto this same truth from a completely different direction. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that every possible outcome of every quantum event actually happens, each in its own parallel universe. Right now there are infinite versions of you, living infinite versions of your life. There's a you who made different choices, who lives in abundance, who has everything you desire. The void state is the switching station. It's the loading screen between realities. When you enter it, you're no longer identified with any particular version of yourself, which means you're free to assume any version. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." You're not creating something new. You're selecting which existing reality to experience. But here's the part that stops most people. The part where seekers have been stuck for thousands of years. They're trying to get to the void state. They're trying to do something to achieve it. And that very effort is what prevents it. It's like trying to relax by tensing all your muscles, or trying to fall asleep by concentrating really hard on sleeping. The Advaita Vedanta tradition, a branch of Hindu philosophy that emphasizes non-duality, teaches that there's no separate self that can reach enlightenment, because the separate self is the illusion. You don't achieve the void state. You recognize you've never left it. Right now, beneath your thoughts, beneath your emotions, beneath every sensation and perception, there's a silent awareness just watching, not thinking about what it's watching, not commenting on it, just aware. That awareness is what you actually are. and it's already in the void. Always has been, always will be. So how do you reach something you've never left? This is the beautiful paradox that Zen masters grin about, that makes Neville's teaching so powerful, and that quantum physics dances around but can never quite capture in equations. You don't reach it. You stop leaving it. Every thought is a departure. Every identification, I am a body, I am a person, I am successful, I am failing, is a departure. Every desire, ironically, is a departure because desire implies you're not already complete. The spiritual teacher Nisargadatta Maharaj, who sold cigarettes from a small shop in Bombay while being one of the most realized beings of the 20th century, put it simply, the real does not die, the unreal never lived. You cannot become what you already are. You can only stop pretending to be what you're not. Let's bring this into practice because abstract philosophy doesn't change lives. Lived experience does. Tonight, when you lie in bed, there's a moment that happens naturally. You're tired, your body is relaxed, your mind is starting to drift. Thoughts come and go, but you're not really engaged with them anymore. You're in that strange space where you're aware but not thinking, where you could fall asleep at any second but you're not quite there yet. That's your doorway. But instead of falling asleep, you're going to do something different. You're going to notice the awareness itself. Not the thoughts floating through awareness. Not the sensations in your body. The awareness that's aware of all of it. And here's the key. You're not going to try to do anything with it. You're just going to rest as it, be it. You already are it, so there's nothing to achieve. Just notice and rest. At first, your mind will rebel. It's designed to. It'll throw every thought, every itch, every worry at you to pull your attention away. This is where Neville's technique becomes crucial. He said to imagine a scene that would occur after your desire is fulfilled, not you getting what you want. That implies you don't have it. Imagine a scene that would only make sense if you already had it. See it. Feel it. But here's the twist. You're not doing this to make something happen. You're doing it to give your mind something to dissolve into. As you repeat the scene over and over in that drowsy state, something shifts. The scene starts playing itself. You're no longer controlling it. And then, if you're lucky, if you're relaxed enough, if you've released control completely, the scene fades too. And what's left? Just awareness. Pure, thoughtless, infinite awareness. The void. What happens in the void? Nothing. And everything. Time doesn't exist there because time requires a sequence of events, and there are no events in the void. Space doesn't exist because space requires distance between objects, and there are no objects in the void. You don't exist there, at least not as you. What remains is consciousness itself, unlimited, infinite, containing all possibilities. The Buddhists call this sunyata, emptiness, but not emptiness as in nothing. Emptiness as in empty of inherent fixed existence. Empty of limitation, the pregnant void from which all things emerge. When you touch this state, even for a moment, something irrevocable happens. You realize, not intellectually but as direct experience, that reality is fluid, that your desired reality isn't far away in space or time. It's right here, just a different frequency, a different assumption. Alan Watts told a story about a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors said, "How terrible." The farmer said, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors said, "How wonderful." The farmer said, "Maybe." His son tried to tame one of the horses and broke his leg. "How terrible." "Maybe." Then the army came recruiting, but they didn't take the son because of his broken leg. "How wonderful." "Maybe." Watts used this story to illustrate that we never know the full picture. That our judgments of good and bad are just thoughts about reality, not reality itself. But there's a deeper teaching here. The farmer maintained a void-like consciousness. He didn't attach his identity to any outcome. He remained as pure awareness, watching the play of life without losing himself in it. That detachment, that emptiness, is what made him free. And that freedom is what allows you to consciously choose your reality. The Hindu concept of Lila, divine play, suggests that consciousness created this whole experience of separation, of forgetting what it is, just for the joy of remembering again. You are God playing hide and seek with yourself. The void state is when you find yourself. And the moment you find yourself, you realize you can play any role, dream any dream, experience any reality. But here's what the sages won't tell you up front. What you only discover through direct experience. When you truly touch the void, when you dissolve completely into that infinite awareness, your desires often change, not because they're taken from you, but because you realize you never needed them for completeness. You were already whole. The desire for your desired reality doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes playful instead of desperate. You want to experience it not because you lack anything without it, but because experiencing different realities is what consciousness does. It's the game it plays with itself. Neville understood this. In his later lectures, he talked less about manifesting specific things and more about awakening to your true identity as God. He said that everything you manifest is just a bridge to this realization. You manifest a new job, and you learn that your assumptions create reality. You manifest a relationship, and you learn that consciousness is the only reality. You manifest wealth, and you learn that you are the operant power. And eventually, if you keep going, you realize that what you were really seeking all along wasn't the thing, it was the freedom to be unlimited. The void state is that freedom, concentrated into a single experience. There's a Zen koan, a paradoxical riddle used to break the logical mind, that asks, what was your original face before your parents were born? It's pointing to the consciousness that existed before you took on the identity of being a person, before you had a name, a body, a story. That original face is still here. It's what's reading these words right now. It's what's aware of your breathing, of sounds around you, of the arising and passing of thoughts. You've been searching for techniques to reach the void state, but the one who's searching is the void state, wearing the costume of a seeker. What if you stopped searching for 1 second? Not giving up, not trying, just pausing. In that pause, in that gap between thoughts, there's a taste of it. And that taste is enough to remember. The quantum physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who discovered the wave equation that describes how quantum particles behave, wrote something stunning in his later years. Consciousness is a singular of which the plural is unknown. There is only one consciousness, and what seems to be a plurality is merely a series of different aspects of this one thing. He's saying what the Upanishads said 5,000 years ago. Tattvamasi, thou art that. You are the one consciousness, experiencing itself as many. Your desired reality exists because you exist. You cannot be separate from it because there's nothing that isn't you. The void state is when you remember this fully, and from that remembering, you don't manifest your desired reality. You recognize you've been living it all along just through a filter of limiting beliefs. So tonight, as you lie in bed, hovering on the edge of sleep, remember this. You're not trying to go somewhere. You're not trying to become someone. You're letting go of the exhausting effort of pretending to be limited. You're releasing the grip on thoughts, on identity, on control. You're falling backward into the infinite awareness that you are and have always been. And in that fall, that surrender, that release, the void catches you. Because the void is not a place you enter. It's what you return to when you stop leaving. It's home. It's been waiting for you, not out there in some mystical realm, but here, now, beneath every breath, every heartbeat, every thought, closer than your own skin, quieter than silence, vaster than space. And when you touch it, even for a heartbeat, you'll understand what Neville meant, what the Buddha realized, what the quantum physicists glimpsed, what the Zen masters smile about. You'll know that consciousness truly is the only reality, that you are the dreamer and the dream, that your desired reality isn't something you need to create. It's something you need to stop resisting. Because resistance requires effort, and effort requires a separate self, and the separate self is the only thing that was never real. Let it go, fall into the void, and discover that the void was never empty. It's been full of you, the real you, all along.